Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to Streets and Eats.
This is episode 56 of Streets and Eats, and today on the podcast, we're talking all things public transportation in Japan.
Last week, we talked about some general travel Japan trips post-pandemic, and this week, we're going to sort of delve in deep to talking about public transportation, because public transportation can be one of those things that is a little overwhelming for some people, and after living in Japan for 5 years and just going back to visit and sort of getting another feel for it, we definitely feel like we're pretty much experts on it. So we want to, really assuage your fears and let you know that it not only is easy, but it's really a great way to travel.
Welcome to Streets and Eats, the travel and food podcast dedicated to taking our listeners to the sights, sounds, and flavors of fascinating places near and far, both on and off the beaten path. We're Jim and Corinne Vale, and we've been traveling internationally and domestically together for decades, visiting more than 90 countries in all 50 states in the USA. We'll share all of the local knowledge and food expertise we've gathered through years of living as expats in Asia and Europe, as well as traveling with families spanning multiple generations around the world. Join us each week for a new adventure.
So it's been a lot of fun here in Vietnam the last, I would say, couple weeks, because even the build up to the new year has been fun. It's kind of like Christmas in the States, except maybe not quite that long. But Tet, or the New Year, is the largest celebration that the Vietnamese celebrate all year long. And it's been really a lot of fun. We had things to do at Astor's school. We had downtown, there's a whole park that, I don't know, I guess city block that's turned into a market where calligraphers go. And
you can get your Tet New Year lucky charms. No. Lucky, what do they call those?
Lucky envelopes for your lucky money?
Yeah, the lucky money envelopes, or
just a calligraphy
scrolls.
saying Happy New Year.
Yeah, really cool, and great decorations, flowers everywhere, very colorful.
People are so happy. And then, of course, there's lots of food.
Well, okay, so one thing I didn't know about Tet was there's Tet trees. Like we have Christmas trees, there's a Tet tree. In fact, shortly after Christmas in our lobby, they took down the Christmas tree and they started putting up the Tet decorations.
And now that you mention it, I mean, the Tet decorations, which is a tree a lot of times, are everywhere.
Yeah.
And they're always decorated with either pink or yellow flowers. And then they also have like little wishes or good luck symbols hanging from them, which is just a placard. It's just a piece of
red and yellow or gold
heavyweight paper.
Yeah, pretty cool.
They're beautiful.
Really pretty. And flowers everywhere. Marigolds and all kinds of other flowers.
So that's what we've been up to. And it's been really interesting watching all the different things that happen around the city. Saigon, actually, Ho Chi Minh, Saigon, it empties out. Everybody goes home to their families during this time. The city closes down for about 2.5 days. It closed down, I would say, afternoon of Friday, the 21st.
Yeah.
And it was completely closed the 22nd, and the 23rd is, I would say, a fourth open, maybe not even that much.
Yeah. And then things will really start opening again.
Tomorrow, I think things are well, I shouldn't say tomorrow because you're not on the same day, but the 24th, things will start opening up completely.
It ends up being like a 3 or 4 day period where most things are closed. You can still get some things like the mini stop across the street. I don't think it ever closed, which is very convenient.
It is a convenience store after all.
It is a convenience store. So that was good. I was really worried that it'd be completely shut down.
I guess a few years ago, you would not be able to do anything for two or 3 days. But now, I mean, Ho Chi Minh is such a cosmopolitan city, and there's so many expats and there's so many foreigners traveling for work and for tourists that they've accommodated us. And not everybody leaves Saigon. Some people are from Saigon, so their families are here. It's been very interesting.
It was kind of cool seeing it as empty as it was. And we didn't venture out too much because things were closed. But when we did go out, the streets were really clear. There's only a few motorcycles riding around, not many cars. And in fact, on the day of Tet, there was nothing. No traffic.
But what was cool is everybody big businesses, apartment buildings, hospitals, you name it, they hire the lion dancers. So even in our apartment complex has a big park in between two of the buildings, and there was a huge celebration down there. And then they go to each lobby of the buildings, and it's loud and it's kind of cacophonous, but at the same time, it's colorful and it's vibrant and it's just
really festive. Yeah.
Happy. It makes everybody happy.
It was pretty cool.
We'll post a picture or two of that on our Instagram.
But the big problem was public transportation. Because it's all closed down, there were no Grab cars, there were no Grab bikes. It was really hard to get around.
In fact, our son-in-law got stuck at our house for about 6 hours.
Yeah.
Which is okay. I mean, he's our son-in-law. But, kind of puts a wrench in your plans if you're stuck somewhere that you weren't planning on being for 6 hours.
Right. Because you can't get a car or a bike to take you around.
If you're coming to Vietnam, Tet is a good time. And especially, we haven't experienced this ourselves, but according to everyone, being out in the villages is really a beautiful place to be if you're doing Tet. So if that's part of your plans, then go for it, because I think you'll enjoy it.
Yeah, that's what we'll be doing next year if we're in the country.
But speaking of public transportation, we did just, as you know, come back from Japan. And in Japan, we have driven. We used to own a car, so we've done a lot of driving in Japan as well. But this past trip, we did all public transportation. And previous trips, we've used plenty of public transportation.
Because it's not always convenient, actually, to use a car in a lot of places.
In fact, it can be extremely inconvenient. Parking is outrageous. I saw a sign. I'm not sure if I took a picture of it. I saw a sign where it was 300 yen for 3 minutes.
Yeah. In Tokyo.
For 3 minutes. So that's, about $3 for 3 minutes.
It adds up quick.
It adds up really quick. I think it topped off at something like 4,900 yen or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, $50.
And if you're traveling around other cities in Japan by car, it's super expensive too, because you're going to be going on a toll road almost everywhere.
And the tolls are outrageous.
Tolls are expensive, and the gas is super expensive.
The last time we rented a car, and so we were tracking our expenses, because, when you drive your own car, it's kind of, I don't know. I'm not as good at tracking as I am when I rent a car. But we rented a car for 2 weeks, I believe. And it was around the same time of year. It was in December. And our tolls came to $800 for 2 weeks. That was ridiculous.
So when
we
you're
were
looking
sharing
at
that with 4 other people, so it didn't cost us that much. But at the same time, if you're taking a family, you don't want to spend an extra $800 on tolls. So public transportation can be very important. Saying that, there are some things you really do want to drive for, like going up to Mount Fuji or something. Even though you can take public transportation to it, you might want. There's so many places to stop and take photos and things like that.
That's the benefit of having your own vehicle.
And that's the benefit of having your own vehicle. But you can do like a day rental for something like that.
But you can really get almost anywhere in Japan on public transportation.
I think you can get anywhere.
Even Mount Fuji, for that matter.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just you're going to be doing it on a schedule, which could be challenging.
And it doesn't stop where you might want to take a picture.
Yeah, exactly.
Too bad. So sad.
But you can always hike, I guess.
So we mentioned this a little bit last week, but we want to reiterate it, that it's very important. The first thing you do when you get into the airport, when you arrive in Japan, especially if you're staying in the Tokyo area at all, Yokohama, anywhere on the Kanto plain, you want to buy your Pasmo and or Suica card, not and. You only need one or the other.
Right.
And it doesn't really matter which one you get. I think it just doesn't matter.
We talked a little bit about it last time. The only real difference that I've ever seen is that the Suica card seems to be accepted more places outside of public transportation.
Yeah, like in convenience stores and
things like that.
vending machines.
But either one of them, I think, works just as well, especially for public transportation and for just being around in Tokyo. It's pretty easy to get. You do want to do it right away, because it's going to actually make some of the transportation expenses a little bit cheaper. You usually get a little bit of a discount when you use a Pasmo card or a Suica card. So that's good. And you can get it right there in the airport, whichever airport you fly into, at one of the ticketing machines. You can see an attendant, but really they're going to take you to a machine and do it.
They're
going to
take you to a machine. So try the machine first. It's all in English. It's very easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's also easy to tap up and get more money added to it. But they'll help you if you have trouble. So don't worry about it at all. We always start out with about $50 on our cards, because if we're going to spend any time in Tokyo at all, you're riding transportation all day long. And you're walking a lot as well, but you're riding a lot of public transportation. If you're only going to be there a day or so, you may not need anywhere near that much, maybe 2,000 or something. Yeah. And that kind of brings us to, do you need a Japan Rail Pass?
It's always a good question. Everybody always asks that wherever you're traveling. If trains are a major source of transportation, should you take a pass? Should you pay individually? When you look at the JR Pass for Japan, it's really kind of a no-brainer if you're going to be doing much travel outside of Tokyo at all.
Any travel. Not much travel. Any travel.
Any travel, yeah. If you do a comparison, say, between the JR Pass and a round trip to like a popular destination like Osaka or Kyoto, you can actually get a first class JR Pass for 7 days for the same price as a regular round trip Shinkansen between Kyoto and Tokyo, or Osaka and Tokyo.
The other thing you got to take into consideration is how much time you're spending in these areas, though. If you're doing a 2-week trip and in the middle of it take a 7-day pass, then you're basically going to be hitting, city after city after city. And that's okay. Or you can get a 2-week pass and go a little slower. But if you plan on spending a week in the areas, then it's not worthwhile to get the pass, because then you're negating the fact that you're riding trains all the time. So you really have to kind of think in your planning how you want to do things.
Right. What does your trip entail? If you've got multiple stops and you're compressing it into a time frame that works with the 7-day or the 14-day, or I think it's a 21-day, then it might make sense. But yeah, if you're just going to go to Tokyo, do a week in Tokyo, and then go to Kyoto and do a week or more in Kyoto,
then just buy the one way.
Then just the one way, or just the regular tickets.
And all the travel that we've done in Japan, I've only used a Japan Rail Pass one time, and that was because I was traveling with a group. And I highly recommend you use it with a group, because you don't want people messing around with trying to pay things. And it worked really nice for us. All you do, it's so simple once you get your pass, is the first time you use it, they stamp it, and then they check each other time when you go through the line, they check the dates, and that's it. But one thing you do need to pay attention to is your luggage and your seat assignments, because seats are assigned on Shinkansen. When people go to buy one-way tickets, they're going to get a seat assignment. And the seats they show you up on a little electronic placard, when someone's getting on and who's going to sit there. They don't give you the name, but that it's occupied. And so what you want to do, and what we suggest is the best way to do it, is at least spend 1 full day in Tokyo, because you need to go into the office of the Japan Rail, and book your trains and your seats. And you can do all of them if you know what dates you are and you're in itinerary, or you can just book the very first one, and then when you get to the next spot, you can book it again. But you do want to have seats before you get on the train.
And that's whether you've got the JR Pass or you're just buying tickets. Either way, you want to book a seat on the train. That way you'll know you have a seat. You can just get on a non-reserved car and hope for the best. We've done that a few times in the past.
And it's been 50-50.
And it's been, 50-50. Sometimes we get a seat all the way from Tokyo to Amori, for instance. And sometimes we're standing for the first half of the trip.
Or more. Yeah. So you really have to.
And so
I don't want to stand. So
it doesn't
I'm
cost
book.
any more to book a seat, to get a reserved seat. So you really should do that. And whether you're doing the green pass or not, that's really the way to go. Know your dates.
Okay, so what's the green pass? You bring it up. You can't just.
Oh, so the green pass is the first class cars.
Are you okay? There are green cars on every JR train.
Right.
And you can take the green car whether or not you're going long distance or not. We used to take the green car all the time from the airport to Kamakura because that's where we lived. And what the green car is, it's, as Jim said, it's like a first class car. So on a train that has 2 bench seats along the wall, it's a whole car of comfortable individual seats with trays,
2-person seats,
and they even come around and give you snacks. I think.
They come around with the cart. Yeah,
and you can get like a drink or whatever.
You pay a little bit extra for it, but it's well worth it, especially when you're looking at a packed train, because more often than not, the green cars have seats available because it is a little bit more expensive.
And if it doesn't, it's not going to let you on it.
It won't let you in it.
I mean, but of course, if you're doing a JR pass and you've got the first class option there, even if you don't have the first class option, I'm sure you can pay for it. It's not that much.
The extra fee, right?
And to me, it's pretty worth it because it's just quieter. It's got more room. It's just nice. I love it.
Well, speaking of more room, we should probably talk a little bit about luggage and what you can and can't take on the train, the Shinkansen.
Yeah, the Japanese have gotten really strict about luggage. And they have some specific rules now about taking luggage on any train, but especially the Shinkansen.
Right. The
Shinkansen, we keep saying, is the fast train. It's the bullet train.
The high-speed train. We should clarify that, I guess.
We should make sure that you know what that is.
And that's just inner city. Between the major cities is where you're going to take the Shinkansen. But like from the airport into Tokyo, you're not going to ride a Shinkansen. You'll be on a regular train. But either way, your luggage is really critical. If you're taking a regular train, we've traveled in the regular cars with big suitcases, and you just keep it as close to as you can. You hold on to it. There's no place to store it. And that's okay.
It's not ideal.
It's not ideal, it's okay. But there's really no other options for those types of trains. But for the Shinkansen, there's no place to keep a very large bag, except for like in the oversized luggage car, which means you need to process it through when you book your ticket. If you've got like a regular,
if you have a carry-on size
suitcase,
there's space in the overhead shelf for you. So you can take that on a Shinkansen without any reservation or without any extra fee.
Right.
But then there's the next size up. I think it's like 23 to 28 inches. We'll put it on our blog. Yeah. And you have to have reservations for.
Reservation.
And if the conductor comes around, and they will, and they're checking your ticket and they see that you have larger luggage, they're going to ask for your reservation. And if you don't have a reservation, they're going to charge you 1,000 yen. So you want to make sure, which is only $10, sure, but you don't want to take that chance. It doesn't make you look good. You certainly aren't saving your face by doing that. And then, of course, anything larger than 28 inches, which is a lot of stuff. I mean, maybe you're going skiing. Maybe you have a large backpack for a multi-day backpacking trip. Maybe you have a bike. There are so many different things that you might have that are just big suitcases. Then you definitely need to put those in the oversized car if you're going to take them on the train with you. And that does have a fee. And of course, that'll probably depend on the size and what it is and everything.
Well, the other option,
there is another option,
which is a better option, is to use the Black Cat service. And we call it the Black Cat service.
Because we know what it is.
Because we know it is. And when you see it, you'll know, oh yeah, it's the Black Cat.
You will see it's the little Japanese truck with a cute kitten on it everywhere you go.
Well, it's a cute black cat that has its kitten that it's carrying around in its mouth.
It's called the Black Cat service.
Yeah.
And there might be other services too, but Black Cat is by far the most famous and most used. And what the service is you can send anything. You can send bottles of alcohol. You can send your luggage. You can send whatever you need to send somewhere. Kind of like our UPS or something, or FedEx. But different because like I said, they'll send anything.
Yes.
And what's nice about it is if you're staying at a hotel in Tokyo, you're taking the Shinkansen to Kyoto, and you're going to be basically on the trains, at least half day, a whole day. And you're going to be lugging that luggage upstairs, downstairs,
onto the train,
trying to find a space for it or putting it in the oversized luggage. That's all a pain. You can, at the hotel, you can go to the concierge and say, could you please have this sent to my next hotel in Kyoto? And they will call Black Cat and do everything for you. And they'll tell you how much it costs and you'll get a receipt for it. And it'll be picked up right there at the desk at your hotel that you're in and be shipped to your next hotel waiting for you when you get there. I've never had it not beat me.
No.
But that doesn't mean it never happens.
And I don't know how they do that.
I don't know how they do it either. Well, they have their own transportation.
They have their own transport, and maybe it's another car on the Shinkansen. Who knows?
And maybe it's timing too, because usually, you're doing that first thing in the morning when you're checking out, and you're not going to get to the next place until the evening. So it does give them time to do it. Well, it doesn't really matter. The point is,
it works.
It works wonders, and it's not very expensive. I think the last time I used it, I paid like $30.
Yeah. $20 to $30.
Well worth it.
The only time it could be challenging is like if you're going to a destination where you're staying in an Airbnb or something like that, where there's not someone there to receive it.
That's a good point.
Because someone needs to be there to receive it, and you can be there. You can have it delivered after you arrive.
So let's say you are going to an Airbnb, and most of them I stayed in with Airbnbs, you couldn't check in until after 4.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're planning on being there after 4, and maybe you plan on going out to dinner, whatever. You can tell Black Cat, please don't deliver it until after 5 o'clock or something, and then you'll be there to receive it yourself. So you can do it. It's probably easier with hotels because the hotel staff will take care of it
Someone's
for you.
Always there. Yeah. And I think it's like a 4-hour window that they have when you do arrange the delivery. So you'd be stuck in your Airbnb for 4 hours, up to 4 hours while you wait for it to come in. And that's time you could be out doing something else.
Like eating
and visiting shrines and temples or all that good stuff that we love to do in Japan.
We think our suggestion is if you have larger luggage, first of all, you don't need tons of luggage, I don't think, but it doesn't matter. If you have larger luggage or skis or anything, you go to the hotel concierge, and you can actually even do it from the airport. So let's say you arrive in Narita and you're going to go up to a ski resort.
Hakuba or something.
Yeah. You can tell them to send it straight there for you. You don't even have to take it to your first hotel. The airport will have the Black Cat service as well. Mm-hmm. It's everywhere. It's just so convenient.
Literally, you can do it in a convenience store. You can do it all kinds of places. And it's probably one of the most convenient services for travelers in Japan.
And I think everyone should have it everywhere. But what can you do? Okay, so we talked about, did we talk about making seat reservations?
We talked a little bit about seat reservations. You do that in the ticketing office. There's no online system yet. If you look at the JR site, they talk about how it's probably going to be coming in the future, but who knows when that's going to be.
It hasn't come yet, and they're a pretty advanced society.
Yeah. And even when it does come, you'll still be able to go into the ticketing offices, which are in all the major stations. There's a couple of them downtown in Tokyo. It's really easy to do. They're going to speak English. You just need to know where you're going, when you're going, and they're going to give you a ticket with the car and the seat number.
The changes if you need to change them.
Changes. It's really
easy.
Simple. And then when you go to the train, you just need to find that car number on the track and then wait at the proper lineup area for that car and then get on. It's super easy.
Well, the only thing I would suggest is that you go to the the train station lunchbox stand that's at all Shinkansens and buy one of the local
get a little bento
boxes because it has interesting food in there. And you want to be you can eat on the train on the Shinkansen. They have a tray and everything. You want to be quiet and you want to be clean, but you can eat on it and drink on it. It's not a problem. Whereas on subways and stuff, you really should not be eating.
Yeah. So why don't we talk a little bit about etiquette on trains and buses?
Well, sure. There's lots of etiquette.
Some general rules.
Like the first one really is you should not be eating on anything but a Shinkansen. I think you can eat in the green car too. If you're on a JR, like I said, we used to take it just from the airport to Kamakura. That's a short is relative. It's still a 2-hour ride, but it's not a Shinkansen ride. It's just a local ride. And you can eat on the green car as well because it's set up for it. It's okay. The other thing you really should never do is very little talking or no talking, especially on the more crowded. I mean, you can talk and you will see Japanese people talking, but they try to keep it very low. On this past trip, there was these 2 girls who were standing next to me. It was very crowded. And they had both probably been drinking, but one was a little bit more tipsy than the other one. And as she was talking, her voice started getting louder and louder and louder.
Really?
And then the other one would go, shh, shh, shh. And she would get low again because she knows the etiquette is to keep quiet. But when you know how it is when you've been drinking. So she would just get louder and louder. So she would shh. It was hilarious. To me, it was a good example because we just know that you're not supposed to be talking on trains too much anyway. And there will actually be announcements that say, keep your talking to a minimum.
Turn off your phone or turn it on vibrate mode but don't talk on it. Yeah, all that stuff. And really you can kind of pick up on the cues as soon as you get on a car. If it's silent, it's a silent car and you really should not talk. If there's low talking around you, then the same type of very low talking as needed. It's not the place for a conversation, but if you need to talk a little bit, it's okay. But generally speaking, especially in the mornings and then the evenings, when people are either on their way to work or home from work, they have long commutes.
And they're sleeping.
And that's sleep time for them. So keep it quiet.
Yeah.
Don't eat.
And no eating. Yeah. Okay. And the other thing is about seats. There are, except for the green car, where you make sure you'll have your own seat. There are no assigned seats on local transportation on subways or anything. And so basically it's first come, first serve, except for there are seats in every car, designated priority seats for the elderly, the infirm, a pregnant person, mom with toddlers, all those things that need a little bit extra help. And almost always someone will, if you are on crutches or something like that, someone will offer you a seat. And you should do the same for them. I mean, not just people on crutches, but anybody these people, they're there to make your life comfortable. And so it's just nice to reciprocate. So it's really important not to sit in those priority seats. And you can sit in them if no one's sitting there. But then when the train comes to a stop, be very aware of whether or not someone gets on that needs that seat. And please give it up immediately. The other thing that they defer to is children.
Children, yeah.
Smaller children especially. But even, larger than I would defer to. They make sure that if there's going to be a seat taken by the family, they're going to always give it to their kids. And that makes sense because the kids have been pounding the pavement and they're tired. And a lot of times they'll fall asleep as well. But it's very important that if they do, they don't have their shoes on the seat. And if you pay attention, you will see that either the parent will take off the kid's shoes or the kids will kick them off before they, sit up there with their feet tucked under them. And of course they do. They're kids, so they're all over the place. But they just know that shoes should not be on the seat. And it's all about cleanliness. And again, courtesy.
Yeah. And so if you're traveling with kids, one thing to keep in mind is if you have a stroller, strollers can be a bit challenging especially in Tokyo public transportation. It's not that they're not allowed. It's just that they're bulky and you may have difficulty getting into a train with your stroller opened up. So if you've got a collapsible one, that's a good way to go. There's space to store it on the racks over the seats. Same for a small handbag or a backpack or something like that. Use them. And not only will they oftentimes give up a seat for children and families, but we've had it several times where we're traveling, you and I together, and there'll be a couple of single seats spread around the train car. and we'll sit down in one. And more often than not, the person we're sitting next to will either slide over to make room for the other one of us or move to a different single seat so that we can sit together, which I find
that's another nice thing to do.
Really nice.
Yeah. I guess it is somewhat of a golden rule, do unto others as you would do have them do unto you. And what they do is they really kind of try and take your needs and wants into consideration. Not always. On the really packed trains, it's,
Can't be done, right?
It's just the way it is. But people pay attention, and you will make such good I don't know, what's the English word?
Good karma.
Good karma for just really sort of paying attention to your surroundings and trying to be as courteous and as offering as possible.
Return the consideration, because it's not that they demand it, but it's kind of an expectation of everybody around you that you're all trying to help each other out.
Exactly. And the same thing, we talked about luggage a little bit, and we talked about bags. If you have a backpack, it's for some reason, they don't want you to wear your backpack on your back while you're on the train. Either move it to the front, put it between your feet, or best of all, put it up on the rack. And we just carried a little backpack around Tokyo for the last few weeks. And it's easy. I mean, no one's going to steal it.
No.
I mean, you're there anyway, so you can keep an eye on it. But it's more comfortable for you. And you just put it up when you start, and you take it down when you're... And even though people don't take advantage of it as much, it really is easy and, again, courteous to do so.
Yeah, and like you said, it's not that you need to worry about theft or anything like that. I mean, I won't say it would never happen, but it's pretty rare. It's more about giving that extra space, having that extra space available for the people around you, so you're not like backing into someone with your backpack all the time. That's really important.
So we kind of got on the train without getting on the train. I think getting on the train, there's a lot of etiquette involved as well, and a few little rules that you have to pay attention to. One of the train stations we go through, and we went through on this last trip at least 4 times, Yokohama. And Yokohama is one of the largest train stations with some confusing lines to get in. And it's not the only one. It's just the one that I know more intimately than others. Basically, the trains are color coded. A local is usually black or red. The JR lines are usually, or the limited expresses are usually green. And then there's a blue.
There's a blue into the airport.
There's different colors that are for different types of trains. And
we're not talking about like the subways. Each subway line is a different color.
Yeah, we're not talking about that.
We're talking about lineup areas on the ground,
and they're like
outside of where you're going to get in the car. And those are the color codings we're talking about.
And they're like taped, permanent tape, but they're different colors. You'll see green, you'll see yellow, you'll see blue, you'll see red.
So it's important to match that color up with the color that's on the schedule screen. So when it shows the next train arriving, it'll say limited express, for instance, in green or red or blue. And you match up that color with the color on the ground, and you know where to wait in the line.
But not only is it taped, but at the very beginning of the line, there's a sign that tells you where it's going to. So there's a sign and it's taped. However, the first time you do this, it might be a little bit confusing.
That's probably the most confusing thing.
It is one of the most confusing things for sure. Even we, second guess ourselves every once in a while, and we've done it a lot. Just ask the attendant there. They are more than helpful. They will basically walk you to where you need to be and tell you to stand there.
And you don't need to necessarily speak a lot of Japanese.
No.
As long as you know the name of the city where you're going or the stop where you're going, and you just say, I'm going to blah, 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 this stop, they'll point you to where to wait in line. Like you said, they'll walk you there and say, wait right here. And if you're in the wrong line, like we've done this before.
We have.
Behind other Japanese people who are lined up in a color-coded thing, and the attendant will come by and say,
this door is not opening or something.
Going here because this is not going to be a good line. There won't be a door here, because they know how many cars are on the trains, where they're going to pull into the station, and which lines are going to be being used. And you can figure that out looking, like you said, looking at what's written at the lineup area in front of it. But that can be challenging. That's definitely all in Japanese, hiragana, katakana, and kanji. So if you don't read Japanese, it can be challenging. But that color coding really, really helps. Really makes it much simpler. And it can
we're making it sound really hard. It's probably the most difficult thing, but it's still not hard.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. And even if you're in the wrong line and a train pulls up and everyone's getting in from the line that you're standing in, and you get up to the door and realize, oh no, this is not the right line. This is not my train. You just step off to the side and let everybody else go and then figure it out. And somebody will come and try to help you.
On any train, though, not just ones with these particular queues that are set up for you. Whenever you're getting on any subway or anything, you always stand off to the side. You either stand off to the right or the left, and you always leave the bulk of the middle where the center, where everybody's going to be able to exit easily and go off the train.
And then you wait when the train pulls up, doors open, you wait for everybody to get off the train before you start getting on.
Which means the car next to you might fill up before yours and you won't get any seats. That's
right.
Life. That happened to me a couple of times this past trip. But that's just the way it is. I mean, it's all about not looking like a brash Westerner who doesn't know how to act in public. And the other thing with that is once you get on the train, a lot of people, I think Americans in particular, from our subways in New York or what have you, we tend to want to stay by the doors.
Right.
We think we're going to get on, we're going to get off. It's more comfortable. You can lean up against something or whatever. I don't know the reason, but you're not going to get a seat by waiting by the doors.
That's true.
You need to go into the middle of the car so that when someone gets off at the next station or 2 stations down, then there's going to be an opening because again, it's first come, first serve. So if you're way over by the door and someone's right in the middle of the car where the person got up, they're going to get the seat. So you just might want to keep that in mind, especially if you don't like me standing the whole time that you're on a train, because you can be on trains for some time.
For a long time. And if you're traveling several stops on a very crowded subway train and you're by the doors, you're going to have a lot of trouble as people come in and go out because you could get pushed out of the train and not be able to get back in. There's a lot of problems just being in the way there. So if you've got several stops, you should always move as far in as you can.
It's just a good idea. And the real crowded ones.
And sometimes you can't do anything. You just get shoved into the car and that's what you do. And if you're not getting off at the next stop, you get shoved out of the car and get shoved back in.
But I got to tell you, we hit one of the trains this past time. Usually when we're traveling, it's a little bit later than the rush hour.
Yeah. That's the good thing about being a tourist.
Because
you don't need to go during the rush hours.
But we did hit one where it was smack dab in the middle of rush hour and I'm being shoved into this car, which might be on somebody's bucket list. It wasn't on mine. And Jim's looking at me because he knows I'm claustrophobic. And he's like, oh my God, are you going to make it?
Make it.
So I got on there and I started to get a little anxious, that's for sure. But as soon as I started moving back towards the center, people got out of my way and I had room to breathe. So that's another thing too, especially if you have a little claustrophobia and you're traveling. Just keep moving. The center is the better. I think that's most of our general rules and tips for riding the trains and the subways.
Yeah. We haven't really talked about paying for them. We did talk about getting the card.
You're right. Let's talk about paying.
It's important to remember that, especially if you don't get a Pasmo or a Suica card.
But get one.
There are several different companies that operate subways and buses in Tokyo, for instance, and in bigger cities in general. So that if you need to buy a ticket, the ticket will get you down the line on one company's, but you might be switching to a different company's train in the next station and you're going to need another ticket for that train.
Well, you don't really need another ticket because when you go to the train station, only if you exit. Because when you go to the train station on the board, it's a little bit confusing.
Yeah,
but
that's
you
why
pick
we
your
recommend
destination
Pasmo card.
And then it charges you, whatever it is to that destination. And if you do change trains and you don't exit what do you call that thing?
Well, think about this. Like, for instance, when we went from going to Yokohama, for instance, We go on a JR train to one station, and then we switch to the Keiko station on the other. As you leave, you have to tap out or put your ticket in.
That's it. Only if you go through the carousel. That's what I'm saying.
But just to get to the next train, you have to go through the carousel. And then the next one, you go back through another carousel. If you bought the ticket, let's say you're using a ticket. If you bought the ticket at the beginning for your final destination, the amount of money is on it, so you're okay. But you still have to take the ticket through the turnstile. Make sure you pick it up again as you go from one train turnstile to the next train turnstile, and then put it back in. It
is easier with a card. We just say buy a card.
The card takes all that confusion out. You just tap in, tap out, tap in, tap out.
And all you have to do is get on Google Maps, and it'll tell you all kinds. I couldn't believe the information that I had on Google Maps for riding the Japanese trains in Tokyo.
It's probably one of the best systems I've seen for getting around a city that you're going to find on Google Maps for sure.
The only problem with Google Maps, and Jim's going to tell you how it works here in a second and how great it is, but the only problem is if you're following it as you go through high buildings, sometimes you're going to lose.
Oh, yeah.
Lose it, and it's not sure where you are. Just remember what it said when you got on. So I guess the biggest tip there is when you go use Google Maps, either take a screenshot if you're worried about it, or just remember your exact things that you have to do to get from step A to point A to point B.
Yeah.
But Google will tell you everything you need to do.
Yeah. If you put in your starting destination, like your hotel, and your final destination, like Ueno Park, it's going to give you a couple options as far as the buses or trains go. We'll just concentrate on trains for right now, because that's where the most information is found.
And that's what most people want to ride.
Yeah. And that's where most people are going to, especially for long distance. It's going to tell you which station you're going to be leaving from, which exit number to go in through, which car is going to be the best car to wait in and to sit on for the destination exit. And then once you get there, which exit number to look for to go out. And of course, the pathway to take as you're walking. So that's super helpful. It also tells you the times for the next train and the next couple trains after that, if you don't make that train or if there's a connection. So there's all kinds of information in Google Maps that really, for traveling in Tokyo especially, there's nothing better that I've found.
Yeah. And it's really good because Tokyo can be, it's this huge sprawling metropolis of over 20 million people. I mean, it's huge. And like Jim said, there's plenty of different train companies, subway companies. There's different lines. It can be overwhelming, but with our tools that we have nowadays,
it's very doable.
It's just not.
It's easy. Yeah.
And no matter what, the people will help you, whether it's someone standing next to you on the platform or one of the attendants. I mean, I would always go to attendant if you can, but just because they definitely know the system and they have the means, the computer and everything.
Well, the other thing with Google Maps that people might ask about is, don't you lose reception when you're down in the subways?
We never did.
I never really have. I've lost reception a very few times as the train is going through somewhere.
Yeah.
Through
in a tunnel
down
or
the
whatever.
line or whatever. But in the stations, I've always had reception.
That's why I said, if you're worried about that, take a screenshot and then you'll know still exactly what you need to do.
And I haven't really tried to use like the offline mode for Google Maps in Tokyo. I don't know if it gives you all of that exact same information. It probably won't have the train times. Those won't be up to date if you're using it in offline mode. But you would still have like the exit numbers and things like that. Okay, I've mentioned exit numbers a few times.
I was just going to remind you, exit numbers.
So why is that important to know?
This is the most confusing thing about exiting the train.
Yeah, riding the trains is not difficult. Super easy. Navigating the stations can be the
a little bit more challenging
thing, because some stations will have 20, even more exits that all go to different parts of the city around the station.
Well, and the stations are so huge that if you get out the wrong exit, you're going to be walking for 20 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really critical. And in the past, and what you can still do, aside from Google Maps, is once you get off your train, the first thing you're going to want to do is find a station map and study
Which is
carefully.
one of the yellow signs.
Yeah, it'll be a yellow sign, and it's got all the station exits shown on the map, and it'll give you some of the key sites or destinations outside of the station that you're going to access from those different stops.
Every site that people go to,
the big sites really are there.
Definitely going to be mentioned. So it'll tell you exactly how to get there if your Google isn't working.
Yeah. So it makes it really quite simple.
All right. Well, I don't know if we probably do, because the train system is so ubiquitous. It's everywhere. There's so much, depending where you are, there's so many differences, different kinds of trains and stuff. But I think the main takeaway for riding trains and subways is do it. It's convenient. It's easy for the most part. And even the kids can figure it out. We sent our teenagers to Tokyo Disney on a long train ride with changes when they were teenagers, like 16 or so. And they had no problems doing it. If they can do it at 16, you can do it. Yeah. I promise you.
I haven't really noticed this like within Tokyo itself in the main city areas, but in some of the surrounding areas on local trains, it's very common to see young children,
little kids,
taking the train to school or to their friend's house or wherever
they're going.
But they're just traveling alone. 5, 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
It's kind of amazing to see, and it's a little bit scary to me.
Yeah. Coming from my American viewpoint, when I saw 5-year-olds getting on the train by themselves, I was just flabbergasted. But this little guys knew exactly what they were doing, where they were going, what they were supposed to do. I mean, they're well trained.
They're well trained, and it's not.
And of course, all the adults are kind of looking out for them. Yeah.
Well, it's like everything else as far as the mentality and the psyche of the Japanese people to look out for each other.
And the tourists. So the other thing Jim and I really love, and I think is often overlooked in many countries, and we love it in all countries, well, pretty much. I can't say we've taken a Vietnamese bus, but in Japan especially, we love riding the public buses.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why. When you ride the subway, if you're not going too far and if you're going too far, then you want the subway, the train, because it's faster. But if you're just going, I don't even know distance wise, but to the next destination, look into taking a bus too. Buses are overland, so you get to see the scenery. They're more apt to have seats, not always, but I think I only had to stand on one bus this last trip, and we took lots of buses, and that was a little touristy bus, so it made sense that I had to stand for that one. But most of the time you're going to have seats. There's priority seats, but again, you can use them until someone needs it.
And they're just a great way to travel because you are above ground. You're seeing the city. A lot of people worry about traffic, but if you avoid the rush hour times, traffic has never been an issue for a bus in Tokyo for us, or even in the other outlying cities. What I really like about them is it's usually only one step up to get on a bus, but to get on a subway or a metro, it's several stories below ground, and there may or may not be an escalator or an elevator. So there could be a lot of stairs to get just down to the train and then back up again. But with a bus, one step on, maybe 2 steps up to get in the back seats, and it really minimizes the amount of walking you do. Transfers are the same way. If you're transferring between different metros, you could be walking a good kilometer in a station in some places. Transferring on a bus usually means you're going to walk around a corner and maybe across the street.
I think the most we've ever walked is like 300 meters or something.
Really close.
Really close. Okay, so the hardest thing might be paying again, because paying can always be a little confusing.
Yeah.
If you have a Pasmo Suica, it takes it, so it's no problem.
Much
you just
easier.
use that. You can pay also with cash, and that's where it gets a little confusing. If you're on a train that's just going and it has a set rate, you pay the set rate and you go. But in some places, the buses don't have set rates because they only have set rate from step one for the different sections of the route, if that makes sense.
You pay for different distances. You'll pay a little bit more if you stay on the bus longer. And there'll usually be a sign somewhere in the bus that tells you what the different amounts are going to be between the stops. Those can be challenging.
Well, I think the easiest thing to know about that is if you're getting on one of those buses, you almost always get on the back door. You don't get on the front door, and you pull a ticket if you're paying in cash. And if you're paying in cash, you get a ticket. And then when you exit out the front door, and it might be 180, it might be 210, whatever it is, you pay the driver there. Again, if you have a card, you just tap the card in, you tap the card out, you're done. So that's another reason to make sure you have your Pasmo Suica, which we really love.
Yeah. But other than that, buses are really a great way to get around the city and the country. Like you said, if you're in Tokyo, you're not going to take a bus from one side of Tokyo all the way to the other side. There's just no buses that run that. Typically, the buses run from like one station in one part of the city to a station in the neighboring section of the city. And so you could like hopscotch from station to station on buses that way, but that's a very inefficient way to do it. And it would be much more expensive. But within an area, or to get you closer to a destination once you did take the metro, the bus is the way to go. And what I always do with my Google is I'll always set it up in the options to prefer buses, so that if there is a bus route available, it tells me that first. If there isn't, it'll tell me the mix of metro or subway and bus to take.
And that's the other thing that Google really does well. It gives you a few different options. So you can see whether it's going to take you 17 minutes or 53 minutes.
Yeah.
And if that's important to you, it'll also tell you what has the least walking. It'll tell you. Yeah,
there's a lot of different options you can take.
It's really got some cool things. So play around with it when you're there. Well, the only other thing that I can think of is the last public transportation we haven't mentioned is ferries. And it's an island nation. So there are ferries to numerous places from numerous places. And we've taken plenty of them. We've taken short ones just across the river, to taking them from the tip of Honshu at the north up to Hokkaido, which was a long one. And we took our car on it even.
I've even taken the ferry between Korea and
you did
Japan.
that. I didn't do that. But yeah,
ferry.
You did that.
Yeah.
So there's all kinds of ferries that you can take too. And ferries are relatively inexpensive, I think, comparatively. Easy. And like I said, they take you from one port destination right to the other. So it's kind of nice. You don't have to go wait in line at the airport and check your luggage.
Right.
Obviously, there's no trains that do that anyway, so you don't have to worry about trains. It's a really good way to do things.
And you can get public transportation right to the ferry terminal, and then pick up public transportation from the destination ferry terminal to take you wherever you're going, if you're not driving. So it's a really good way to get around too.
And don't shy away from them.
Yeah.
They're comfortable. They're clean. There's usually places for eating. There's places for sleeping. There's definitely vending machines and sometimes cafes, depending on how well used it would be. But no matter what, there's vending machines, and Japan.
Yeah. And you can, of course, bring your food on.
And you can bring your own food. That's right.
And eat at a table sitting in a dining area if you want.
Yeah. There's probably no Wi-Fi though.
The one thing I wasn't really expecting was like on the Honshu to Hokkaido ferry going to Sapporo.
The onsen?
No. One of the sleeping rooms is just a big open tatami room where everyone's just kind of laying out on the tatami mat all together in a big communal heap. Yeah. So
everybody, well, not one heap. Everybody's spread out.
Everybody's spread out. But
basically, there's
one big
plenty of room for everybody. But yeah, it's just a tatami. Alrighty. Well, I think we've covered public transportation. If you have any questions, join our Streets and Eats Facebook community, because that's the place for questions. And we are in there every day. And so are other intrepid travelers. So just ask a question that you might have, and we'll see if we can come up with a good answer for you.
If we can't answer it, someone else probably can. All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love. Hit the like button and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.